Hey everyone, and welcome back to Stateside Health Scoop. Today we are diving deep into something that's been in the news a lot recently,
Mm.
whooping cough,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
we all sort of think of as like an illness of the past. But
Right.
um, we've got this Newsweek article here with some really surprising information about a recent surge in cases.
Yeah. It's really interesting because whooping cough is one of those things that can kind of sneak up on you?
Yeah,
It looks like a regular cold in the beginning, especially in babies.
right. And the CDC is reporting that there have already been over 18,500 cases in the U.S. just since January.
Yeah.
That's 5 times higher than last year.
Yeah.
And even closer to home, the article talks about some outbreaks that are happening in Minnesota and North Dakota.
Right.
In North Dakota, in 2023, they only had 17 cases for the whole year.
Wow.
And this year, they've already had 73.
Oh, that's a huge jump. Yeah, and that's probably not even the full picture.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times people don't even realize they have whooping cough, especially in those early stages, so they don't get diagnosed properly.
So let's back up a little bit. Can you give us like a quick whooping cough 101? What is it really?
Yeah, so even though it's called whooping cough or pertussis, it's not actually a virus.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a bacterial infection,
Okay.
and that's caused by a bacteria called Bordetella pertussis, and that's a really important distinction because
Right.
it means we can treat it with antibiotics.
Okay, so antibiotics are important here.
Yeah.
How contagious is this? Is it something that spreads really easily?
Yeah, unfortunately, it is pretty contagious because it spreads through droplets,
Oh.
when someone coughs or sneezes.
Right.
And that's especially dangerous for babies and young
Uh,
kids, anybody whose immune system isn't fully developed yet.
That's scary. And you were saying before how it can be tricky to spot the early signs, especially in babies.
Well, yeah, definitely. So think about it, a baby with a runny nose, maybe a little bit of a fever and a cough that's kind of getting worse over time.
Yeah.
Sounds like a normal cold, right?
Totally.
But with babies, they might not even have that classic whooping cough sound in the beginning.
Well,
So you have to be extra careful. Look for any pauses in their breathing or any signs that they're struggling to breathe.
wow. Those are subtle signs.
Yeah.
I mean, you really have to be paying attention.
Yeah.
So okay, let's say it's not just a cold anymore.
Yeah.
What happens? Then what are the classic signs of like a full-blown case of whooping cough?
Well, whooping cough actually comes in stages.
Okay.
So after that first stage that we talked about, with the cold-like symptoms, which can last for a week or two,
Right.
then you get to what's called the paroxysmal stage, and that's where you get the whooping cough sound.
Okay.
And that's when people have those really intense coughing fits.
Oh, wow.
Sometimes they go on for minutes at a time,
Oh, God.
and they can be coughing so hard that they actually turn blue or even red in the face because they're not getting enough oxygen. And they might even vomit from coughing so hard.
And they get dehydrated, especially babies, right?
Absolutely. Dehydration is a big concern, especially for little ones.
Yeah, the article was saying that babies under a year old, they're at a higher risk for complications like pneumonia and seizures.
Yeah, it can be really serious.
So it's not just a cough.
No, it's definitely not just a cough.
So how long does that second stage usually last, the one where you've got the whoop?
It can last for up to 6 weeks or even more.
6 weeks?
Yeah,
Wow, that's a long time.
it is a long time to be feeling that miserable.
So you said there's a third stage. So what's that like? What does recovery look like?
Yeah, so the third stage is all about slowly getting better.
Okay.
The symptoms start to fade away, but even then it can take a few weeks or even a few months to fully recover.
Wow, so we're talking about a long haul here,
Yeah,
especially for babies and little kids.
yeah.
So, okay, let's talk about how we protect ourselves and our families. I know the article talks about vaccines.
Yes, vaccines are super important, especially for young kids, right?
In the U.S., we have the DTaP vaccine for children and the Tdap for teenagers and adults.
Okay.
Now, they don't completely prevent you from getting whooping cough,
Yeah.
but they make a huge difference if you do get it.
Right.
Your symptoms will be much milder.
And the article said that even vaccinated people can get whooping cough.
That's right. The protection from the vaccine wears off over time.
Right.
That's why booster shots are so important.
So it's not just a one and done thing.
No, it's not.
Okay, so what happens if somebody does get diagnosed with whooping cough? How do you treat it?
Well, the main treatment is antibiotics.
Okay.
And those can really help shorten the illness and make it less likely that you'll spread it to other people.
Right.
Sometimes doctors will even give antibiotics to people who have been in close contact with someone who has whooping cough.
Oh, so like a preventative measure.
Exactly, especially for people who are at high risk, like babies and pregnant women.
Yeah, the article mention them specifically.
So that makes sense. And what about quarantine?
Yeah.
I know that's always a big question with these kind of illnesses.
Yeah, quarantine is definitely important to stop the spread.
Okay.
The article says that you need to isolate for 5 days after starting antibiotics. But if you don't take antibiotics, then you need to stay isolated for 21 days after your symptoms started.
Wow, 5 days versus 3 weeks.
Yeah.
That's a big difference.
Yeah, it is. And of course, on top of the medical stuff, there are some basic things you can do to help yourself feel better.
Like what?
Well, the article mentions some advice from the UK's National Health Service.
Okay.
And they recommend getting plenty of rest, drinking lots of fluids, and taking pain relievers if you need them.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it sounds like it's kind of a multi-pronged approach,
Yeah.
You've got the medical treatment, but then you've also got just taking care of yourself and preventing the spread.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's talk about diagnosis for a minute. How do you know if you have whooping cough?
Well, the doctor will take a swab from your throat and your nostril, and they'll test it to see if the Bordetella pertussis bacteria is there.
And I'm assuming they also look at your symptoms and whether you've been around anyone else who has whooping cough.
Absolutely. They'll take all of that into account. It's kind of like a detective game,
Yeah.
trying to put all the pieces together.
Wow. Well, we have covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
We've gone from, what causes whooping cough to the symptoms, the stages, the treatment, of the prevention.
It's a lot to take in.
Yeah. But this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for part 2 of our deep dive, where we'll be exploring even more about whooping cough.
I can't wait.
Me too. This is fascinating stuff.
It is.
So see you guys in part 2.
See, yeah. It's kind of crazy how whooping cough is making a comeback like this.
It is, right.
It really shows you that these diseases, they don't just disappear.
Right.
They're always evolving, and we have to keep learning more about them.
And adapting. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the article we're talking about focuses on the U.S., but is this a global thing? Is whooping cough a problem in other parts of the world too?
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's a worldwide problem.
Okay.
The World Health Organization, they estimate that there are millions of cases of whooping cough around the world every year.
Millions.
Wow.
Yeah.
And a lot of those cases are in developing countries.
That's a lot to deal with. So why are we seeing these outbreaks? What's causing these surges in different places?
That's a really good question, and it's something that scientists are always trying to figure out.
Right.
There are a few things that could be contributing to it,
Okay.
like the immunity from vaccines wearing off over time,
Okay.
or delays in vaccination schedules,
Right.
and even the bacteria itself changing,
Oh, wow.
Some strains of Bordetella pertussis have become resistant to certain antibiotics.
So it's not as simple as just getting the vaccine once and you're good to go.
Right, you have to stay up to date with your boosters and be aware of these new strains that are popping up.
So it's kind of a constantly moving target.
It is, yeah.
Well, that's why articles like this one from Newsweek are so helpful.
Absolutely.
They give us a good overview of what's going on and some practical advice on, how to recognize and manage whooping cough.
Yeah, and they also remind us that this is a public health issue.
Right.
It's not just something that individuals have to deal with.
It takes a village.
Right. Exactly. It takes a global effort to really tackle this disease.
So what are some of the things that are being done on a global level?
Well, there are a lot of different initiatives. There are programs to improve vaccination rates.
Okay.
Researchers are working on developing new and more effective vaccines.
Okay.
And there's a lot of effort going into tracking the spread of different strains of the bacteria.
So it's kind of like a multi-pronged approach.
It is, yeah.
Well, that's good to hear. I mean, it sounds like people are really taking this seriously and trying to find solutions.
Yeah, they are. It's a big priority.
But I'm sure there are still challenges.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Of course. There are always challenges when you're dealing with something this complex.
Right.
One of the biggest challenges is making sure that everyone has access to vaccines and healthcare.
Right. Especially in those developing countries where you were saying there's so many cases.
Exactly. That's where the need is the greatest.
Yeah. So it's not just about developing the solutions. It's about making sure that everybody can actually benefit from them.
Absolutely. That's a huge part of it.
Okay. So what else can we do? I mean, we've talked about the global efforts, but what can individuals do to help fight this disease?
Well, one of the most important things is just to be aware of it.
Okay.
The more people know about whooping cough, the better.
Right.
So talk to your friends and family about it.
Okay.
Share what you've learned. Make sure they know the symptoms and how to prevent it.
Education is key.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power.
Yeah. So what are some of the key takeaways from our deep dive today? What do you want our listeners to remember?
Well, first of all, remember that whooping cough is a serious illness.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just a cough, you know?
Right.
It can be really dangerous, especially for babies and little kids. So if you think you or someone you know might have whooping cough, get medical help right away.
Don't wait.
Don't wait.
And second vaccination is crucial.
Yes, absolutely. Make sure you and your loved ones are up to date on your DTaP and Tdap vaccines.
Okay. Good reminders. And what was that third thing?
Oh, yeah. Be aware of the symptoms,
Yeah.
especially in babies who might not have that classic whooping sound.
Right.
So any signs of trouble breathing, any pauses in their breathing, take it seriously.
Good advice. I think this deep dive has been really eye-opening.
Really?
We've learned so much about whooping cough. It's not just a simple cough.
It's definitely more complicated than people think.
It is, and there's a lot of work being done to try to combat it.
Yeah, a lot of really smart people working on this problem.
All right, this has been great, but we're not done yet.
No, we're not.
There's still more to uncover about whooping cough. So stay tuned for the final part of our deep dive.
Can't wait.
It's amazing how much we learned about whooping cough, from just reading that one article.
It is, right?
It really makes you appreciate how important it is to stay curious.
Yeah.
And to look for reliable information,
Yeah.
So that we can really understand these health issues.
Absolutely. And I think Newsweek did a really great job with this article.
Yeah.
They presented the facts in a way that was easy to understand. They really emphasized how serious this is.
Yeah.
And they gave some really good advice on, what to do if you think you or someone you know might have it.
Yeah, I like that they had that call to action at the end, encouraging people to reach out to their doctor if they have any concerns.
Yeah, that's so important.
It is, it's good to see a publication actually engaging with their readers like that.
It is.
And encouraging that kind of open dialogue about health.
Right, because there's so much misinformation out there.
There is.
It's more important than ever to have trustworthy sources of information.
Yeah, so that we can make good decisions about our health.
Exactly. It's like having a friend who's an expert, someone you can trust to guide you through all the noise.
Yeah. And speaking of friends, I was just curious, have you ever had any personal experience with whooping cough?
Yeah, it's funny you should ask that.
Yeah.
I actually remember when I was a kid, one of my really good friends got whooping cough.
Oh.
And I remember being so worried about him. He was so weak and he was coughing all the time.
Oh, gosh.
It was really hard to see him like that.
Yeah.
But thankfully, he got treatment and he made a full recovery.
That's good.
But it definitely made me realize, how serious this illness can be.
It's not something to mess around with.
No, it's not.
Well, I think this deep dive has been incredibly insightful.
Me too.
We've really learned a lot about whooping cough.
We have.
It's more than just a cough.
Yeah. It's a complex issue.
It is, and it's important that we understand it.
Absolutely.
So to our listeners, we encourage you to share what you've learned today with your family and friends.
Yes. Spread the word.
Talk about whooping cough. Talk about the risks and how to prevent it.
Let's all do our part to stay healthy and keep our loved ones safe.
Well said. Well, this has been another fantastic deep dive.
It has.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure.
And for sharing your expertise.
Anytime.
And to all of our listeners out there, thank you for tuning in to Stateside Health Scoop.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of health and wellness.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.